With the Texas Rangers looking to shed payroll, could the New York Mets pursue a Jacob deGrom reunion? We'll talk about that on today's show.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now, if any of you were on social media on Friday, you might have seen some buzz about Jacob deGrom potentially getting traded back to the New York Mets. And I know it was Friday because I contemplated doing a Saturday show. I had recorded a show every single day from May 13th through until Saturday, but I had told you I was going to take the weekend off, and I did. I enjoyed myself, especially because as I read into the story a little bit, while it is an amazing premise to think about, the idea of Jacob deGrom getting traded back to the Mets, there is nothing linking these two sides yet, and there's really nothing concrete that says Jacob deGrom is going to be shopped this winter. This all stems from a story in the Dallas Morning News that then got reposted or quoted in a story from MLB Trade Rumors talking about how the Rangers' priority this offseason is to get under the luxury tax threshold. They might be looking to shed some payroll, but really, if you read the actual story, it doesn't even necessarily say anything about shedding payroll necessarily. So I had to subscribe to the Dallas Morning News. $1 subscription for now. I got to make sure I get out of this thing because you just know nowadays, if you're subscribed to one of these newspapers after their trial entry period and you're in there for 3 months, all of a sudden it's going to be like $49.99 a month and I won't be able to get out of it. So literally on my agenda, the first thing on Monday today is going to be get rid of this subscription. But I wanted to read it from the source, see exactly what Evan Grant said in his story. And it was a story titled, "As World Series Prize Fight Begins, Can Texas Rangers Keep Up as They Trim Payroll?" And the first couple paragraphs, it's all flowery. It's talking about the World Series, the high payrolls of the Dodgers and the Yankees. And by the way, shout out to the Dodgers for winning a couple really good World Series games. And Mets fans, it's a couple wins away now for the Dodgers from the Yankees being eliminated and Juan Soto being a free agent. So I think it's going pretty well so far on that note. But this story is talking about the payrolls and how payrolls give you the chances to get into the lottery that is the playoffs. And payrolls don't guarantee playoff success, but they guarantee you, or they at least make it more likely that you're going to be there on a perennial basis, and essentially wondering if the Rangers are going to be like the 2019 Nationals, where they're going to fall off after just that one miraculous World Series win, or if they can be consistent World Series contenders. And a big part of this is wondering how they're going to spend, if they're going to spend this offseason. And Evan Grant, who covers this team, essentially is telling us all that the Rangers are looking to get under the luxury tax threshold. He says, "As free agency is about to begin, the Rangers seem determined to get under the competitive balance tax threshold, which will go to $241 million in 2025. He talks about how they've been over that threshold the last couple of years, and they want to reset their luxury tax penalties. Every year you're in the tax, you get penalized more and more for being a luxury tax team. He says, quote, Davis is their owner, Davis's top priority this winter appears to be getting below the luxury tax threshold to reset penalties. That's priority number one. Getting back to the playoffs is a close second, but it's second nonetheless. There are other reasons for his desire, mainly the headwinds caused by uncertainty over TV revenues. That's real. He continues to say, nevertheless, if the Rangers are to accomplish both trimming payroll back $20 to $30 million and getting back to the playoffs, it's going to require some financial gymnastics. Let's assume the Rangers would like to get to the opening day payroll of about $220 million, including projected benefits, which is part of the CBT computation. He said that would have them, or that would leave them some room to make an in-season addition if needed. He talks about where they're at. He says they have $140 million committed to six players, another $25 million projected for their 5 arbitration eligible players. He said if you filled out the roster with the rest being minimums, 15 minimum guys, and you add in that $18 million in benefits hit that every team has to pay, that'll take the Rangers payroll to $195 million. And essentially, that would only leave them with $25 million to spend before they hit that $220 million target. And if you are trying to rebuild a bullpen, trying to replace Nathan Eovaldi, Andrew Heaney, who are both going to hit free agency from their rotation, that's a tough task at $25 million. And that, forced everybody to make that leap of, maybe they have to trade some salaries. They look at the cap sheet, they look at who is on the books. You see Corey Seager, you see Marcus Semien, probably not trading those guys. But right at the top, you see Jacob deGrom. You trade him, you clear a ton of money that you can then spend to fill out the rest of your roster. Very similar to what we saw last year. It wasn't all, money related, but when the Padres traded Juan Soto, they were dealing a guy from their roster that was not going to be there long term, and they used that to fill out a bunch of other needs. So the idea might be trade Jacob deGrom, get some pitching back in return that's more affordable, and then take that extra money and fill out your roster in free agency. Maybe you want to re-sign Nathan Eovaldi. And at one point, Chris Young, their now president of baseball operations, had said that re-signing Eovaldi would be a priority this offseason, but also acknowledged that it could be his last year with the Rangers this year because he is hitting the open market. If you look at their projected rotation next year, right now it's Jacob deGrom, it's John Gray, it's Tyler Mahle, it's Cody Bradford, and then Kumar Rocker. Mets fans might remember him well. Mets drafted him in the first round, did not sign him. They got a comp pick that turned into Kevin Parada, and then Rocker eventually ended up going to the Rangers the following year. But that's their rotation on paper. You have Dane Dunning, who could factor in. You have Jack Leiter, another top prospect, who was also Rocker's teammate at Vanderbilt. He made a cameo in the big leagues this year. He's getting close. They have some options, but in that rotation, you have deGrom and Mahle, who are both coming off Tommy John. You have John Gray, who we actually might talk about a little bit in the final segment today. Little teaser for you there, but he dealt with groin issues this year. Cody Bradford had a rib issue this year. So all 4 of their locked-in projected big league starters are coming off injury-plagued years, or for deGrom and Mahle, they were still rehabbing, but regardless. And then you have Kumar Rocker, who has an injury history and would be going through his first full season in a big league rotation. They have to add pitching. They are losing number 1 and number 2 in innings pitched for them this year in Heaney and Eovaldi. I think Eovaldi was 1, Heaney was 2, but regardless, both of them are free agents. Number 4 for innings pitched was Michael Lorenzen, who they traded at the deadline. Traded him to the Royals. And John Gray pitched an inning more than Lorenzen did. So they have a lot of innings they have to make up here, which is why you can speculate maybe it makes sense for them to trade Jacob deGrom. Maybe you re-sign Eovaldi to be your ace at $15 million less than deGrom's making. Maybe it's something close to what he's getting now, or what Eovaldi has a player option for, which is $20 million. But over multiple years, maybe you re-sign him to a 4-year, $80 million deal. You get Eovaldi back. You trade Jacob deGrom. All of a sudden, you have $17, $18 million to play with when it comes to the luxury tax that you can then use to sign another starter, sign some relievers. That is why there was a connection there, because if there's one team that could take on Jacob deGrom's contract, it's obviously the New York Mets. They had the financial flexibility to do such a thing. They have the motivation to do it as well, you would think, because you're bringing back one of the greatest players in franchise history. So, could this reunion actually happen? We're going to go through that in the next segment. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. You watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today, where you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. So you can turn $10 into $1,000. You can cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB. You're going to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports when you check out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Goals to get to 11,000 subscribers by the end of the World Series. We might be running out of time, so I appreciate all of you who continue to hit that subscribe button. All right, let's talk about Jacob deGrom pitching in a Mets uniform again. Would I love it? Without a doubt in my mind. Jacob deGrom, of all-time Mets for me that I got to actually watch, he is a close second to David Wright. I mean, David Wright has to be number one for me because I grew up rooting for him. He was everything to me when I was a kid. I wore number 5 on, the first time I was able to pick a jersey and travel baseball, it was going to be number 5. And yeah, David Wright's always won, but Jacob deGrom, when it comes to guys that I enjoyed watching the most, he might be atop the list. I love pitching, and Jacob deGrom was unbelievable. I still got on my back-to-back deGrom Cy Young shirt right now for the deGrom episode. Had to bring it out. But I've been wearing it even after he left because he is an all-time Met. And if you had to give me one moment that I could have for next season, the idea of Jacob deGrom back on that Citi Field mound, they play their first 2 series on the road. 7th game of the season, home opener. Let's have a 6-man rotation. Why not? Jacob deGrom takes the hill. And that Simple Man music plays. Mama told me when I was young, sit beside me, my only son. Like, chills. I would give anything for that moment again, to be able to see that reunion, to see Jacob deGrom back on the mound with the team that just went to the NLCS to Game 6 behind him. A new era of Mets baseball with a familiar face. The ace is back, and he's got a new elbow. He's ready to go. I would love nothing more than Jacob deGrom being in a Mets uniform again. It would be amazing. But there is a lot of hurdles to that actually happening and that actually being a reality. A lot. First things first, the contract. Not a hurdle technically for Steve Cohen, but the Mets just got out of the paying aging aces business. They literally, this next season, finally get out of it as Justin Verlander's club option is voided because he didn't get enough innings pitched under his belt. So that $17.5 million the Mets were going to spend on Verlander pitching for the Astros is gone. Scherzer's off the books. You finally got out from under that. And all of a sudden, you're going to pay Jacob deGrom $40 million in 2025 at 36 years old. He signed a 5-year, $185 million deal with the Rangers with a full no-trade clause. At the time when they signed to that contract, there was a lot of people out there who said they were the only team that was going to give him that contract just because of the uncertainty with the health and how big of a deal it was. And I don't know if the Mets ever got an opportunity to match. We'll never know, but it felt like both sides in some ways were ready to move on. deGrom ready to take that deal with the Rangers. The Mets not willing to pony up that type of a commitment to keep him. This deal has a full no-trade clause. So that's your whole starting point. Are the Mets willing to even approach this? Would Jacob deGrom actually want to come back? I think there would have to be a mending of relationships there between those two sides before anything could even be broached. Like, the Mets would have to call the Rangers and say, hey, is there any chance you'd be willing to trade him? And they'd probably have to throw some feelers out there on a package. And there would have to be some type of a bridge made. Can we talk to deGrom? And then they'd have to basically say, hey, Jake, we're sorry how things went or whatever it is. We want you to come back. We are so fired up about this team that we have This is a better era of Mets baseball. We have David Stearns in place, everything else. David Stearns probably leading the conversation. So, this is how we're running things. We want you to be our ace again. We want you to finish your career at the New York Mets. We want you to take us to the promised land. That would all have to happen first and foremost. And when it comes to the contract, it is $40 million in 2025, $38 million in 2026, $37 million in 2027. When you trade for a contract, the money you inherit is how you determine the luxury tax. So for the Mets, you take all that money, which is $115 million over 3 years. That would be his luxury tax hit. $38.333 million. That's what hits your books as far as luxury tax is concerned. That's a lot of money. Now, the contract also has a $20 million club option in 2028, which has escalators in it. If he pitches 625 innings, which at this point would require 3 healthy seasons, then he has one top 5 Cy Young finish, that becomes a $30 million club option. If he throws 725 innings, which is impossible at this point, or has 3 top 5 Cy Young finishes, which would mean the next 3 years he is back to being Jacob deGrom. It becomes a $37 million club option, but it is a player option. If he throws 160 innings, has a top 5 Cy Young finish, is healthy in 2027, the final year of his deal. So if he's healthy in 2027, he can become a free agent, basically. Like if he's healthy, if he's deGrom, it's just 3 years, $115 million left. If he's not healthy, then you do get that carrot of potentially having a 4th year of deGrom at $20 million. So that's everything that's at stake with the contract. The Mets will have to decide that they want Jacob deGrom back. They don't care about how much money that is. They look at the free agent landscape. They say, all right, Corbin Burnes, we start over. You start a contract fresh, 8 years. Maybe it's even 9 years if it's a crazy market for him, but probably 7-8 year deal for a guy that's, I think, just entering his 30s. Do you want that commitment? You look at Sean Manaea. Man, the market for him is $25 million over 3 or 4 years. Is he really going to be ace? Is he going to hold up? Like, you'd have to really talk yourself into Jacob deGrom is going to be back to being himself. And there's a chance he is. Okay. He looked great in his return. Only made 3 starts, only pitched 10 2/3 innings, but he pitched to a 1.69 ERA, only gave up 2 runs, struck out 14, walked 1. He still looked like Jacob deGrom. So you have to believe that Jacob deGrom is going to be himself. You have to think about what that would mean to your fan base to get him back. That idea of being able to put him front and center with this team that made the deep run. Maybe you find some other pitching that you can pick up, and you're going to say, all right, we believe that a combination of Jacob deGrom and Kodai Senga, top of rotation, can get us a World Series. And look, if the Mets had a healthy Jacob deGrom in this last playoff run, I think they probably win the World Series. If they have a healthy Jacob deGrom, instead of even Sean Manaea, they might win the World Series. But again, that's if, ands, and buts. There's a lot that comes into that. A healthy Jacob deGrom in not just the regular season, healthy Jacob deGrom come October. That's asking a lot of a guy that's going to be in his, late 30s for the rest of this deal, essentially. He turns 37 in June or July next year. You also have to trade something to get him. I don't think that the Rangers, when they're talking about potentially shedding payroll, are considering shedding their top contract and their ace. I think they're looking at next year, and they envision Jacob deGrom playing a huge part in them being World Series contenders. They have been waiting now for 2 years to actually see it. Are they really going to trade him before they actually get a chance to see it? Really full go? It seems unlikely to me. Instead, you look at John Gray, you look at Tyler Mahle. Are there teams out there that will take a 1-year risk contract and you shed some money, you reallocate some money, or do they just try to build this thing on the cheap? And I think that's probably what happens, where they just take the $25 million they have. Maybe there's a non-tender here, non-tender there that gets that to $30 million, and you just try to find value deals. I think that's probably what the Rangers do. For this to really happen, the Mets would have to be aggressive on the prospect front, aggressive in pursuing deGrom and selling him on this idea of coming back. If they can get deGrom to waive the no trade clause and they can make the offer sweet enough for the Rangers to do it, this would be amazing. And I would love it. I really would. Do I think it's going to happen? I would put the chances at probably less than 1%, if I'm being honest with myself. In my heart, I hope it happens. Do I think the Rangers are going to trade him? And do I think the Mets are going to pursue this aggressively enough to make it happen when they could just spend money to get Corbin Burnes? If you're going to give a pitcher $38 million, you can just give Corbin Burnes that and sign him. Now, there might be more risk in paying Burnes. Maybe it's not even 38. Maybe it's just 35. But if it's 35 over 8 years, yeah, I think there's more risk in that contract than deGrom potentially. I would talk myself into it. I would want deGrom over Burnes. I'm a Mets fan. I got the deGrom shirt on right now. I got over there on that wall. There's a frame. It's almost a sad. It's about to be a very sad framed. It's got a game used baseball, and it's got Pete Alonso, Jacob deGrom, and Michael Conforto in this like framed photo, and it's potentially soon going to be just a wall of forgotten Mets that I once loved. Like that we're staring down the barrel of that. I want this to happen. I think a lot of Mets fans would be all in on this, but it is just not very realistic because I honestly think to get this done, first and foremost, you know what I believe the starting point on any trade negotiations probably would be? I think you're sending David Peterson back in this deal. Why do you say that? Because this has to be a deal that helps the Rangers contend next year. And they're going to want a cost-controlled starting pitcher. And who do the Mets have that fits that billing? You're not going to trade Brandon Sproat. Christian Scott just went under the knife. Your other minor league arms are unproven. I don't think that they're going to get on the phone for Tyler McGill or Jose Budo. So the conversation probably has to start with David Peterson. And then you probably have to throw in some other things you don't want to trade. Maybe they say we want Daniel Nunez because we need to rebuild this bullpen. So we want Nunez. Maybe they want Peterson, Budo, and Nunez. All of a sudden, you're trading all of your young pitching to get another old guy. Maybe they love some of your prospects. Maybe it's David Peterson and Drew Gilbert. But now you're trading 6 years of Drew Gilbert when you can just sign a free agent. As much as I want this to happen, I just can't envision it. And it sucks that I can't envision it because I really wanted to talk myself into it. And again, that image of Jacob deGrom coming back out in a Mets uniform, I'd give anything for it. But at this point, I think the way that happens, two ways that could happen. First way, the more likely way, is he serves his contract with the Rangers and the Mets sign him at the end of his career, as a send-off, and maybe he's still great at that point, but sort of end of his career, final tour at the Mets, retire a Met, all that stuff. That's the most likely way. The other way, the Rangers are bad, deGrom is great, and the Mets are trading even more for him at the deadline. So through that lens, yeah, I see the vision, and I would love it if this was priority number one. If Steve Cohen and David Stearns identify the Rangers, oh, they're looking to shed salary. Let's see if we can take advantage of this. And they pursued deGrom, and maybe who knows? Maybe the Rangers would be so happy with the financial flexibility and getting David Peterson that you can get away with some lottery ticket prospects that they love, not guys that are complete no names in the prospect world, guys that we wouldn't know, but the Rangers have identified. I love those two teenagers. We think those guys might be superstars. So they are intrigued. They said, we want this guy and this guy. And the Mets look at it, say, all right, there's a long range of outcomes for an 18-year-old. Let's trade these two kids and David Peterson, and let's bring Jacob deGrom home. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that type of trade happens because I would be so fired up about it. But I think more likely the Mets could pursue the Rangers for John Gray. And that's where we're going to close the show in the final segment here. John Gray as a trade candidate actually makes a ton of sense to me. I'm going to explain why in the next segment. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. So make sure you got a bet that you really like. Maybe you're looking at the NBA slate and you just see a matchup that is so overwhelming. You look and you say, let's see what the Knicks schedule is this week. Let's look it up real quick here. Knicks. Okay, the Knicks play the Pistons on Friday. maybe you'll love that matchup. You throw $5 on the money line, Knicks versus Pistons on Friday. They win that game, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on this same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started again with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. And I will also be doing our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways throughout the offseason. So you can take part in those. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. All right, so while everybody was talking about Jacob deGrom getting traded to the Mets, I looked into the Rangers payroll situation, and I found what is probably a way more realistic trade candidate, and that is Jon Gray. Jon Gray is going to make $13 million next season, but he originally signed a 4-year deal with the Rangers that paid him an average annual salary of $14 million per year. He got $15 million per his first 2 seasons, $13 million the last 2 years. So for the Rangers' purposes, when it comes to getting under the luxury tax, Jon Gray counts as $14 million next year. They can use that money to sign another starting pitcher if they just don't like Jon Gray that much anymore, if they want to sign some relievers, whatever it is. If the Rangers are looking at their team and they want to reshape their rotation, that is a contract that is movable, that other teams would potentially sign up to take. The injury risk isn't as extreme as Tyler Mahle coming off TJ, who's sitting at a similar number, although I think his luxury tax hit is less because it was a 2-year deal where he got paid less when he was rehabbing, and this year he's getting paid more. So I think they might even like Mahle more, right? They might believe in him. Coming off TJ, they just invested to see it play out. They probably want to keep him. Jon Gray, they've had for 3 years, and the results haven't been great. But he's still a quality starting pitcher. And if you're the Mets in this situation, the idea of trading for Jon Gray is essentially betting on yourself to turn Jon Gray into what you just turned Luis Severino into this year. You have that confidence as an organization that you can get the best out of pitchers now. And it's the exact same cost for you when it comes to the money. 1 year, $14 million for Jon Gray. A guy that's still averaging 95 miles per hour on his fastball with a good slider. There is something there with Gray. Last year, he dealt with a groin injury that took him out at the end of May. He was bad in June coming off the injury. Tried to come back and settled in July, and then he got hurt again and got shut down. So it was a groin injury, not an arm injury, that cost him about half of his season. Overall, he still pitched 102 and 2/3 innings. He had a 4.47 ERA, but you look at the splits month by month. In April, he had a 1.24 ERA in 6 outings, 5 starts, 1 relief appearance. In May, he had a 1.85 ERA in 4 starts before he pulled his groin. Now, in June, he faced the Mets after that injury initially. He gave up 9 runs against the Mets, gave up 8 runs against Baltimore. That ballooned his ERA. But before that injury, we were talking all-star for Jon Gray. I remember it, just baseball. I remember assigning a story at one point like, man, Jon Gray is saving their rotation right now. He might just be an all-star this year. And then it all went downhill. Maybe it's the just baseball curse. Sometimes we write stories about people, and then, of course, that's when they might get derailed. It just sort of happens. But you look at what the Mets would be potentially investing in here. You're talking about a trade that wouldn't cost you much. I was really thinking about the package. I think the absolute upper end of what the Rangers would ask for is Tyler McGill, not David Peterson, Tyler McGill. Now, I don't think I would do that trade because you have 3 years of arbitration with Tyler McGill. This is 1 year of Jon Gray. And I would just bet on, I'd rather find the reclamation project in free agency and have McGill still as insurance than trade McGill for Gray. But I feel like that would be sort of the upper ask that the Rangers could conceivably seek for Gray's services. And I think the Mets probably say no to that, but let's just say they're looking to clear the money. And you can get it done with a prospect like Mike Vassell that you don't even really know what his future is. Can he actually hold down a big league spot in a rotation? That is a big if. Maybe it's someone even further down. It might not be much at all. You might just be taking the contract. And if that's the case, I would take a shot on Jon Gray. I really would. You're talking about a guy that, for the most part, has stayed relatively healthy throughout his career. Again, his fastball still sitting 95. He's got a good slider, whiff rate of 33.4% this year. Batters only hit 213 against it. Maybe he just needs a little bit of a tweak to his arsenal. He has not thrown a sinker. You give him a little two-seam fastball. You saw the success Luis Severino had on that, and I will say that came before he got to the Mets. He was working on that with Driveline, but he had a lot of success with it, pitching for the Mets. So, maybe that is what it is. Maybe you tweak the characteristics of that fastball, 95 miles per hour. Maybe you help him with it. Who knows? Maybe there's something that the Mets can unlock there. And all of a sudden you have a guy that could pitch up to Luis Severino's capabilities from this past year. That's on a 1-year deal essentially at this point. So I actually do like him as a trade candidate. If you're not giving up much, you're just taking on the salary, you're doing the Rangers that favor. Again, I don't think I'd give McGill up for him, but if they did, I wouldn't hate it. And the reason I say that, I don't think that Tyler McGill is capable, based on what we've seen, of putting together a season like we just saw from Luis Severino, where he gives you 180 innings at the big league level, pitching to a sub-4 ERA. I don't know if McGill has that in him. Jon Gray, if he's at his absolute best, if he's maxed out, he's a former first-round pick. I do think that he could give you that. Has he done that much in his career? I don't know if he's done that at all. I think his career ERA was very close to Tyler McGill's, but just significantly more innings. I think his best season with the Rockies, he might have done that. He pitched in Colorado. So, yeah, 2019, he had a 3.84 ERA in 25 starts, 150 innings. And in 2017, over 20 starts, he had a 3.67. So he's done it a couple times. With the Rangers in 2022, he had a 3.96, barely under 4, but under 4 in 24 starts. Jon Gray is an interesting trade candidate. If you're looking at the Rangers and you're looking at their payroll and you're trying to find a contract that makes sense for the Mets to try to target because they can use money to their advantage, that's the more likely option, I think. Do I imagine the Mets are super keen on that instead of maybe just signing a Walker Buehler or a Nick Pivetta or somebody else that's in the free agent market and just doing it that way where they don't give up any assets? Yeah, I think they're probably going to go to free agency first. But if you're having some issues finding that reclamation project in your rotation, maybe you already got a Corbin Burnes or you brought back Sean Manaea or you did both. Maybe you've been super aggressive. If you decide at the 11th hour of the offseason, man, the Rangers would love to get off of that money. Maybe they have negotiations going with Eovaldi. Maybe Eovaldi's market is drawn out. And to get to where they have to for Eovaldi, they got to trim Gray. And maybe all of a sudden, the Mets trade for Jon Gray and they give up Justin Jarvis. And you're just like, deal. Like, come on. We'll take the money. We'll take the pitcher. And he'll slide into a 6-man rotation. I think Jon Gray is worth a flyer for sure. I wouldn't trade significant prospect capital to get it done. Like I said, the absolute tipping point is Tyler McGill, and I don't think I would do that. I think realistically, the deal that I would sign off on is Mike Vassell. And anyone who's listened to the show for a while knows I don't really think that highly of Vassell as a pitching prospect. So it's not really saying too much there. But overall, I think this is at least a name to keep in the back of your mind because I absolutely could envision that trade happening this offseason. Unfortunately, I think that's a lot more likely than the Mets trading for Jacob deGrom. But man, if I ever hope I'm wrong, it's this time because Jacob deGrom back in a Mets uniform would be absolutely electric. It's just a lot of hurdles to see that pipe dream actually come to fruition. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. We'll be back throughout the rest of the week. We're going Monday through Friday throughout the offseason. And when there's actual news that comes up, not just Jacob deGrom rumors, I will be hopping on and doing extra shows over the weekend when there's news that really calls for it. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's show. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, Head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports Today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.